Welcome to the Winnipeg Free Press Blue Bombers this week. I'm Ed Tait with Paul Wiecek. Paul, Bomber home opener is upon us here. Let's kind of take a few minutes to recap what happened last week in Saskatchewan. You were there. What jumps out to you the most about all the good things the Bombers did well last week?
Well, the play of the offense, right? Drew Willie, 22 for 25, 325 yards, 3 touchdowns. Boy, we haven't seen that kind of precision. Drew Willie's had a couple good games for the Bombers. I think that's as precise as I've ever seen him. Bomber running game, how about Paris Cotton, 13 carries for 108 yards, and then he's complemented by the Thunder part of that package. Of course, Paris being lightning, Cameron Marshall being thunder, touchdown on the ground, touchdown through the air. That was exactly the kind of running game the Bombers never really did get going last year. So lots to like on the offensive side of the ball, and I think it kind of papered over some of the problems on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, before we go to the problems on the defense, the key to what was happening on offense clearly was the offensive line too. And you know, we knew that had been remade over the winter, but boy, Stanley Bryant was good, so was Dominic Picard, and the kid Suk Chung was really good too. And none of that happens on offense without some protection and the holes up front by those guys. They were really good, and you, as a guy that chronicled all 71 of those sacks they gave up last year, just talk a little bit about that.
Well, you know, it was interesting. Chris Walby, of course, former Bomber legend, was on Twitter last night saying, geez, the offensive guys never get any credit because they don't generate stats. And he's absolutely right. Who generated the stats last game? Drew Willie with those big numbers. Cameron Marshall, Paris Cotton had the big numbers, but it all begins with the play of the offensive line. How good was the Bombers' offensive line? They gave up 1 sack to the best front four in the CFL for my money. Mm-hmm. John Chick had it. He pyloned Stanley Bryant in the first quarter, but Stanley Bryant was great against John Chick after that. But how about this storyline? The right side of the Bombers' offensive line, I thought, was the big question mark coming in this game. Right tackle Jace Daniels, he was kind of the Bombers' second choice. That was supposed to be Mark Dial's job. And then, of course, a raw rookie in Suk Chung at right guard. They lined up against Alex Hall, who Bomber fans will remember. He led the team in sacks a couple years ago. That is a ferocious defensive end. Alex Hall did nothing. He had 3 tackles, and that was the sum total of it. So you're quite right. Drew Willie, Paris Cotton, Cameron Marshall getting all the credit, but that offensive line, we wondered how good it was. It was certainly revamped. I think we got a taste that those changes are working.
You mentioned some of the things that get glossed over in a win. That always happens that way, but some of the same things we saw last year with the inability to stop the run, and they got burned a few times for some big plays. What did you see there, and what are they talking about in the last few days about correcting that?
Well, the numbers speak for themselves. 212 yards rushing the Riders had. Yeah. Mike O'Shea didn't want to talk about it after the game. Mike O'Shea hates talking about his porous run defense, but there's no getting around it. Mike O'Shea didn't want to talk about the lousy run defense last year either. How did that work out, right? It was a 7-11 season. They've got to be better against the run. Was it just first week jitters, or, was it a scheme? Was it just there was some poor tackling? Was it all those things combined? Probably. Big test for them coming up here Thursday night, though, against Hamilton Tiger Cats. I mean, they're going to be pounding that ball, too. Bombers have to be better on run defense. And then, all told, at 495 yards the Bombers gave up. How often do you give up 495 yards offense and win the game? Right. Not very often, but, of course, it helps when the other team's starting quarterback doesn't get out of the second quarter.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the Tiger Cats. They lost their opener last week to Calgary. They're very good on special teams. They got a touchdown from Johnny Sears on an interception return. What did you see in them last week that might be a bit of a concern for the Bombers?
Well, you mentioned Johnny Sears. He was phenomenal last week, and in a week in which all these former Bomber cornerbacks were really good. Jonathan Hefney with a big game for the Montreal Alouettes. Jovan Johnson looked pretty good for the Ottawa Redblacks. Well, you had a pretty good secondary of ex-Bomber defensive backs. So that leaps off the page. The other thing is this Hamilton team, boy, they're going to be hungry. Once again, they had their heart broken by the Calgary Stampeders, losing on a last-second field goal the way they did. This is a team that is going to be very motivated coming into this stadium. The other thing is, let's remember, the last time the Bombers went to the Grey Cup, they beat the Hamilton Tiger Cats 4 times that season. They were 4-0 against the Ticats. There's something about the Bombers
That's a good stat.
There's something about the Bombers playing well against the Ticats that seems to lead to other really good things. They've only got them twice this year, although who knows if they see them again in the playoffs. This is a big test, I think.
Bombers Ticats home opener on July 2nd. We'll have all the coverage on the WinnipegFreePress.com and on the pages of the Winnipeg Free Press. For Paul Wiecek, I'm Tait. This has been Bombers This Week.